All right. Is everybody awake after lunch, finally? Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's somebody said that, they were going to dance here, but I don't know. Maybe later.
Apparently not.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to our session. My name is Montoya. I'm the marketing director of the iTwin platform at Bentley Systems. And I'm going to be the facilitator for this session. And it's going to be more like an informal conversation between us. Since I'm the marketing guy, I wanted to invite people that really knew what they were talking about. So I invited Sam Migliore, my colleague here, that also works with the iTwin platform at Bentley Systems, and Carsten Sonne-Schmitt, who is right next to Sam, and who works at Digital Energy. Both were going to discuss, how digital twins and artificial intelligence can be used in your journey towards digital transformation. And with that, I'd like you to give them a little applause, because really happy that they're with us. So with that said, I asked them to prepare a little bit, although this is going to be a little bit more of a panel discussion. I wanted them to have the opportunity to set the stage, so to speak. So, Carsten, why don't you tell us a little bit about Digital Energy and what you do there?
Yeah. Thank you, Antonio. Good afternoon. So my name is Carsten Sonne-Schmitt. I've been in the energy industry for around 20 years, mainly upstream oil and gas in Europe and Middle East. And last year I changed to the dark side, Digital Energy, where I'm managing director. We focus on industrial AI solutions. Spent the first 5 years of Digital Energy to basically do R&D, build AI solutions from big data sets. And our approach is what we call environomics. So we unite economic strategies with sustainability agendas. And one of the solutions we're showing today is exactly on environomics.
All right. So
most of our clients are in heavy transport, energy-intensive industries, and we typically go for industry problems before technology. So we try to make an impact.
All right. Thank you, Carsten. Then Sam.
Hey, I'm Sam Migliore. I don't get out much because I'm in development, so they generally don't let us out to speak to people. So this is kind of fun for me. I've been with Bentley Systems for about, I think it's 24 years now. In July, I started out as a product manager, handling P&IDs and instrumentation and wiring and schematics. I changed over from there and sort of started working on handover solutions for owner-operators, specifically in the power and process space. Moved over to the original I model 1.0, which is, we brought that to market. I've been working on digital components. And so after that, I transitioned into cloud services in the iTwin platform, which is sort of our iTwin is the next generation of the technology. We started with iModels so long ago. And if you're not familiar with Bentley Systems, basically we're a group of people who are pretty passionate about advancing infrastructure, and the way we sort of express that passion is we build software that people and our partners use to design, construct, and operate infrastructure assets specifically.
Thank you. All right, so to get us started, I wanna ask a question to you guys, and I was pondering how to ask this question. And at first I was like, how are you, or what is your feeling of where you are in the digital transformation journey? But I realized that that's a little bit of a personal question for many of you. So in order to get a better gauge maybe of this, I wanted to ask you guys, I mean, if you guys allow me, what do you think is the level of digital transformation advancement in our industry collectively, right? So for that, I'm gonna propose these three stages, these three different levels of maturity, if you will, for digital transformation, right? A first level is a level of efficiency. So basically, what we want to do is to apply digital tools to do whatever it is that we do faster, right? And typically, that is going to help us to do, like an incremental, improvement on the situation. But that can be done a lot better if you focus on focusing on changing the workflows that you're using to leverage the tools the best possible way. And then that's more about effectiveness, right? So let's say that those are two sides of the same model, because you're not truly fundamentally transforming what you do, right? But when I talk about the last level, the breakthrough, is when you really are able to say, well, my business has been fundamentally transformed. And let's think Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? That's a fundamental transformation of the same business in a very different way, leveraging digital technology. So if you want to think about this number one, number two, and number three, how many of you guys think that the industry is currently at number one? All right, number two. And number three.
Yeah, nobody.
Okay,
thinks,
so there's
nobody
like
thinks we've had the
non-applicable
Netflix.
then,
Yeah.
because I didn't see all the hands rise up. So anyway, this was an interesting one. But anyways, so with that in mind, I asked both Sam and Carsten to tell us a little bit about what is the approach that each one of our companies like Bentley and Digital Energy takes towards helping our users achieve or advancing their digital transformation journey. So with that, Sam, if you would tell us some of the key elements.
Sure, thanks. If from my perspective, the first key element that you have to start thinking about, and again, I've been doing this for quite a few years now. I started out working in handover and worrying about things like how we were just going to do handover and how we we're going to get our data together. But I think the first thing that you have to think about is really how do you begin creating and curating a digital twin? And I think you have to think about what that digital twin needs, right? It needs to have the ability to aggregate and align engineering data. It needs to be able to surface data that you may not have currently with you. Maybe it's IoT or sensor data so that you can think about the state of the thing that you're building. And then finally, it also has to be able to help you surface enterprise data like maintenance systems and work orders and things like that. So whatever you have to, whatever platform you pick, you have to think about the fact that those things all have to be available to you really so that you can use it in a meaningful way. And then, of course, you also have to be able to consume it in multiple ways. So you need to be able to, obviously you need to have it available on the web, you need to have it available on mobile, but you have to think about things like newer technologies like AR and VR. right? So your digital twin also has to be able to handle those things as well. The second thing that I would tell you that you have to consider is not so much, it's more of a concept, right? I think when people start thinking about digital twins today, they think about them from the maintenance aspect. I built this thing and I'm going to run it, so I need a digital twin. And at Bentley, and personally, I would argue that you need to start thinking about digital twins a lot earlier than that, right? You need to start thinking about how you're going to create and curate those things from the concept phase, design phase, construction phase, and then into maintenance, right? And the reason is because you don't want to do it, you don't want to have your data quality and your ability to conduct analysis happening on the back end. You want to know about that as it's being built. You want to monitor it and make sure it's appropriate for what you're doing. And Bentley has several tools that will help you through these phases and builds digital twins during these phases, like ProjectWise, like Synchro, and of course, like PlantSight. PlantSight is a great example of a tool that is built on our iTwin platform. It can actually view the data that you're creating early in the process and maintain that data all the way through to operations. And it helps you understand things like, what do I have? What's the quality of it? Where is it in my facility? And then as you move into operations, it can even get to the point where it's helping you understand how that thing is performing, right? And I think the main takeaway of all of this is think about the platform that you're building this on, right? Our products are built on the iTwin platform. And we built the iTwin platform specifically because we saw a need out there for digital twins. We saw a need for being able to begin to create these things throughout the phases. But more importantly, with iTwin platform, we wanted to promote an open platform that would allow you to bring in not just Bentley tools, but all of the data and the vendors that are out there. Because at the end of the day, and I think Keith said this, you're not going to buy a digital twin from a single vendor. Everybody that's out in that room across the hall is going to be part of your digital twin. And your platform has to be able to support those vendors, and it needs to allow you to be able to create your own solutions. And that's what the iTwin platform does. It allows partners like Digital Energy to come in and leverage the ecosystem that maybe was created in ProjectWise and add things like AI right on top of the exact same digital twin that we were creating.
I might be biased, but I have to say that I love this open ecosystem vision that we have at Bentley. So Carsten, you guys have a very compelling vision as well. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to also briefly tell us about your Environomics vision.
Thank you. So our vision in digital energy has always been to build advisors powered by AI. We don't believe that AI is ready to go in and take over. We want the AI to provide actionable insights for typically energy-intensive industries. We work with a focus on supply chains, everything that moves in the supply chain. That can be your vessels, it can be your rigs, or it can be people. Our approach is what we call Environomics, and that's because we are trying to unite two elements. One element is business output. That could be your cost. It can be your production. And the other element is sustainability. That can be emissions, or it can be safety. We have a simple approach to make sure that we deliver, and that's called track, trace, and optimize. We need obviously to get access to the data, put it on a platform so we can trace it, make simple analytics, and then we bring in our AI solutions to bring the optimization. The specific solution that we are talking about today is called predictive safety. In the energy industry, especially in oil and gas, there's a very keen focus on HSE, safety. Having been in the shoes of managing assets in the oil and gas industry, there is no crystal ball. What we try to create here is a crystal ball for safety. So predicting occupational safety events. It gathers a lot of different data sets. So everything from your high signal data, so your LTIs, your TRIFs, to low signal data, such as permit to works, work orders, it can be observation cards, audit reports, and using AI to then predict within a time period when an adverse event can happen. Often, with respect to safety, there is an aspect of communication. So when you have shift changes or if you have large crews, these teams will be cross-cultural, and there can be a problem in communicating. Contextualizing all of this on a digital twin, we found extremely powerful towards our clients. So as you can see here in the video, this is a simple warehouse, but basically with yellow and red dots, any manager can come in the morning, quickly assess the situation, can play a quick movie. Where has the activities been for the last 12 hours, for the last week, for the last 2 weeks, and then move on to what is the picture of what I'm taking over. Where are the risks? Where are the activities? Should I intervene? What should I do? So this is a very good way of contextualizing what would otherwise be complex data sets in a simple way, and saving time and saving lives.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So with that as a background, I want to open up the actual conversation on this, right? And, you know, I mean, all this technology is fantastic. You have very complex and sophisticated frameworks that you have described. So I want to put it more for, you know, a little bit my level of understanding. You know, what do you think is the promise of getting this implemented, right? Where you see the impact of this? And Sam, perhaps you can start talking a little bit about this foundation that is the digital twin.
Yeah, sure. You know, if you think back, I guess about 12, 15 years ago, everybody was really sort of involved in, specifically I think in oil and gas, because that's where I was at the time. Everybody was really sort of trying to figure out how they were going to do handover so that they could make the most of the engineering information that they'd already paid for and was usually sort of lost in the handover process. You know, elements of that were exactly what the same kind of challenges are today. How do I aggregate the data that I have? How do I align it so it's useful to me? And then how do I show it to people so that they can actually use it in their daily activities? And I think the promise of digital twins, and it's actually more of a concept, but the promise of a digital twin is you're able to, if you choose the right platform, you're able to align and aggregate that data fairly easily today. I think everybody understands the power of data. And I think, you know, solutions like what Carsten's showing is actually showing you the power of it. And if you choose the right platform and you don't sort of lock yourself in to one specific vendor, you're able to create sort of just a wealth of data that partners, you know, if Bentley doesn't create the right thing for you, you can bring other partners in and they can help create the solutions that you need to operate your assets. So I think that's sort of the biggest impact that I see digital twins having right now.
And then Carsten, I mean, you talk about this crystal ball. I mean, like, I'm very interested. How do you know?
Yeah, well, I guess the first and foremost, the main challenge that we see is not so much from the tech side or from the data side, but actually the management of change. So on the people side, we see a lot of digital transformation failing due to management of change. You need to make sure that you get the users and create a tool, create a user experience where people will follow through. You scope it out correctly, and you're actually solving something that needs to be solved. With regards to the crystal ball, then the solution that we have at hand, I think, is extremely powerful for having been in those shoes for many years. When you go, for example, on an offshore location, you would have 3-4 weeks shift. In Norway, 2 weeks, but that's something else. And typically, when you have those shifts, you would have an increased risk of incidents. There's a handover there's a new OIM, so the captain of the platform will arrive, and typically he will have or she will have to go through thousands of papers. What has been the permits to works released? What have been the activities? Who's on board, and so on, and she needs to communicate that to the teams to ensure that there's an efficient handover in activities and work. If you replace that with the digital twin and with our solution, you can almost imagine how an OIM arrives. He plays the movie. He can see what has been the last 3 weeks of activities within half an hour or within 10 minutes. This is where there has been certain maintenance activities. This is where an incident happened. This is where my people are. And this is the situation I'm taking over. This is where my permit to work are open, my work orders. This is my people. This is where I have an increased risk. This is where I should intervene. And within a short period of time, you are sort of set up for success. And I think the combination of having AI contextualized on the iTwin, this example, is very powerful for the workers. And that's, for me, the most important thing, that is to create something that has impact for the user.
In a way, I see that as this paradigm shift that happened to us when we started using Google Maps. I don't know how many of you guys here use still like a Rand McNally, or not many, right? Oh, wow, one person. But Google Maps really transformed the way we kind of did this. And this sounds to me like a similar type of, within, scales that are different magnitude. But is that kind of like how you see this?
Yeah, well, I guess 20 years ago when I was going on road trips, I had to plan 4 or 5 hours in advance, draw out on the map, and I would get surprised while driving. Oh, there's a traffic jam, there's some road works, would not know where to stop for good food or for fuel. But today all of that is powered immediately through some sort of map solution. That can be Google Maps, or it could be another solution. You just go in the car and you start and you're taken on your journey. I guess you can draw some similarities to having a digital twin solution, basically setting you up for success. So it's kind of plug and play, and the people can focus on what they've been trained to do rather than paperwork and admin.
Yeah, that kind of like goes back in hand with what you were talking about, Sam. That the part of having data that is actually can be used and exposed to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets back to moving away from things like file-based solutions and recognizing how valuable the data is that's in a digital twin. The other thing I would mention too is it tends to you need to think about how you're going to de-risk your digital twin as well, right? Because we're going to be building these assets for a very, very long time, right? And the solution that you build it on really has to be able to stand up to that test of time, right? And technology is going to change. It just is, right? So the platform that you build it on today may or may not be applicable to what's coming tomorrow. But the way that you can sort of de-risk your digital twin is by making sure that at the very least the platform that you're using supports multiple vendors, supports you being able to create your own solutions on top of it. And that's kind of the theory we're using with iTwin platform is, one company's not going to do it all. You need to be able to build your own solutions on top of the data that you've taken so much time and paid for, quite frankly, to aggregate and align and use.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like this concept of having this tech stack that you're carefully building across time over many, many years.
Yeah.
Right, and it's really hard to switch from one vendor to another. So having something that allows you to,
something that's open at least sort of allows you to the comfort of knowing that you own the data. You're not locked in. You're able to take your data, and if you need to, move to another platform at some point, or bring in additional platforms or additional vendors.
Mm-hmm. Not your data, not your digital twin, I guess.
Exactly.
Are you taking questions from the audience?
We will be taking questions of the audience, but hey, go ahead.
Ralph Rio, ARC Advisory Group. You've talked about open a few times,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd like a little deeper understanding of how that will work with a digital twin. So let's say there's a piping run and they figure out they need to increase the diameter of the pipe. which would affect the brackets. But the pipe and run was designed in Bentley, but the brackets were designed in another application. How would the person who designs the bracket become engaged?
Well, so if our platform can support about 45 different formats right now. And I think one of the things that we bring to the table is we will take, as long as you are spatially locating those models, that's sort of important, right? As long as you're doing that, the model from, I'm going to say vendor A and vendor B for this purpose, right, will live quite happily in the exact same iTwin together. So let's say the piping designer comes in, changes the diameter of the pipe. As you go through a design review on that iTwin, you would be able to recognize the fact that, hey, this hanger is not going to work for this pipe any longer, right? You can pop in an issue, and the person in vendor B's product can come in and go, oh, I've got to change the hanger. That's way too small or not appropriate for what's doing. So when I talk about open, there's a couple of aspects. One is we're vendor agnostic in terms of the data that we bring in. We really do try to do our best to bring in as many design vendors as we can. And secondly is it's actually an open platform. It's built on REST APIs. And what that means is that when I don't build something that you need, Carsten can come along and build something you need, or you can work with an ISV and get your own solution built on top of the exact same data, right? So you're not dependent on me to provide everything you need for your digital twin. You are independent at that point and able to build your own solutions.
Thank you. Very timely question there. So, so I think we've seen a little bit the promise, the challenges, and I really want to open this up to everybody for questions. But before we go there, I wanted to pose a very high risk, another question to the audience. I hope that this time the math adds up, because last time didn't. But how many of your organizations are, or within your companies where you're working at, do you guys have like an innovation lab or R&D or a disruption department? Do any of you have? But you raise your hands.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
There's quite a few.
We interact with a lot now.
Very cool. So with that, in mind, I wanted to ask, both Carsten and Sam, where do you guys see in the future? So Carsten, I give you the first take here.
I see a lot in the future. If we try to make it specific on the solution at hand here, I really see a world where you will have your crew going offshore on their helicopter. They will be wearing VR glasses, and basically they will be setting themselves up for success on those VR glasses, running a digital twin, looking at what they need to do, whether they are there for a 3-week shift, so they understand what the conditions are they are taking over, what the workload is ahead, or it could also be a maintenance engineer that goes out for a specific job and he's just prepared on those VR glasses, which you can then also augment, of course, on the platform. I see that as sort of, even in the shorter term, something very tangible that's ahead of us.
I like that. And what about you, Sam? What do you think?
My answer is going to be a whole bunch shorter than Carsten's. If I, ideally, right, when I look toward the future, I think the one thing that I would absolutely love to see, and I think it's pretty much the only way that we're going to deliver on the real promise of digital twins, is a thriving ecosystem where anybody can have a digital twin and they can invite a vendor in who does or has a solution that they need to work on the data they have, right? That has to happen. We can't be sort of siloed into individual vendors or data sources anymore. It has to be sort of a thriving ecosystem where people can just plug and play. Carsten can build an AI solution. XM Pro can come in and build something that looks at your schematics and starts mapping out duct work via AI as well. And I could go on about what other folks are doing with it, but I think that's the main thing, is just a thriving ecosystem around that valuable core of data.
So you mentioned a couple of vendors, like tech companies that are developing software
Yep.
on top of the platform. Do you see owner-operators perhaps doing that as well, do you think? Or?
So I've certainly been in conversations with owner-operators before, but generally what that takes the form of is we get to an owner-operator and they are working with an ISV, and so we'll work with their ISV partner to try to help them build a solution on iTwin platform. I think the one thing that I see that's sort of a burgeoning area is I see a lot of engineering firms coming to us and saying, hey, we want to begin offering more services downstream or beyond just the engineering construction phase. We want to build solutions that allow us to help manage the assets that we're designing and constructing. So we're working with actually quite a few engineering firms to help them build those digital twin solutions to help them sort of stay relevant in the process past just engineering construction.
And thank you for that comment, because that kind of wraps up, when I was talking about those 3 levels, right? Engineering firms that are transforming their business to do something more like engineering as a service, right? To go beyond just project by project. That will be a good transformational example of, kind of like a breakthrough. So yeah, that's
your Netflix moment.
That's my Netflix moment right there.
There you go.
Thank you so much. All right, so with that, this was more food for thought for you guys to open it up for questions. So.
Hi, Michael Hoteling from ExxonMobil. I think the vision in terms of where do you see things going, I think that is common amongst a number of us. And as we talk about the infamous term digital twin, you'll get to where in the construction industry or greenfields, very popular because not many people are building with Legos and the plastic things that we used to build in the early 80s, right? And 90s. But can you comment a little bit more about the sustainment of the technical debt that you've built? Because in a lot of cases I hear about we're doing a lot of collaboration and third party to build, but it usually gets pretty quiet when it talks about examples of how people are actually sustaining that technical debt or asset.
Well, I think it's going to be in terms of technical debt. There are, and I hope I'm answering this right, so tell me if I don't, but there are vendors who are working on how we leverage existing data and bring it into a digital twin. There are vendors, and quite frankly, Bentley is too, working on how you get design data on current systems into a digital twin. I think the question then becomes, well, so once I built it, how do I maintain it? And I think that's what you're going for. The way I state it today is our platform will interact with as many vendors as we can, and as you synchronize changes to the platform, it actually keeps track of changes as it goes. So the core of the digital twin, meaning the engineering data, right, does understand what it used to be and what it is today, right? And then you can couple that with, you can cut milestones or revisions, and you can actually see the differences as your digital twin is evolving. And that's kind of why I said, to me, it's important to start early, right, with a digital twin, because a lot of times you want to understand why you did certain things at certain points. And with an iTwin, you can actually see the changes that have occurred. And it will maintain those changes for you throughout the life cycle of that asset. And you can link data at specific points into that as well. So it's inherent in our platform, and it works across vendors as much as possible. We do take quite a bit of pains to get as much data, geometry and business data, stored in here and aligned, right? Because it's super important. The data is absolutely critical to keep, and to keep as managed as possible. I hope that answered your question. kind of. Well, if you'd like to, yeah, if you want to clarify.
Feel free to jump in, so it's not a one-way conversation. But I guess the again, from a ongoing, I mean, in talks of, once it's built, it almost gets to where it's what I would describe as a cost plus proposition, to where now you have some other asset that you've got to spend to keep up to date, et cetera. And I'm just kind of curious, after the asset is built and it's turned over to operations, how have you seen people, utilize that, that asset to, quite frankly, take costs out of their business?
Yeah. And I would tell you that it's pretty early right now for digital twins, but I do think that that's an aspect of, and I referenced the fact that engineering firms are starting to sort of broaden out their scope. I think that's going to be an aspect that you see become part of their offering. They're gonna design it, they're gonna deliver it, they're going to play a part in operations, and then of course they'll have the tools and the expertise to keep it fresh. Yes, I expect that it probably will, but at the same time, I think you have to weigh that against how important is it to know, the state of your asset. You spent a lot of money to build, in your case, probably platforms and processing facilities. How important is it, and what's it worth to make sure that you know the state of that thing, right? You know what's in the field, where it is, and how it's operating on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's pretty important. And yes, it might cost a little bit of extra money, but I do think that you're going to see that evolution, I think, in the marketplace.
So does that imply that it's as built in?
As built it is a great way. Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious, in terms of facets, do you see experiences where people take their construction and then it's now turned to an asset?
I can tell you that I've seen people take the digital twin, or begin to take the digital twin, or I would say precursors of them, and throw them into PLM systems, try to manage them that way, and then try to break parts of it off and recreate or manage their as-builts that way. I think digital twins are just an additional sort of layer on top of that helps you get a better understanding of what your asset looks like today, have a better, more visual, be able to interact with it, and also be able to build more solutions on top of that data set. And those are the things you couldn't do before, right? It was sort of like, yeah, I've got this as built and I've got all the documents, but I really can't do anything with it. I think with digital twins, you will be able to do really high value stuff with it and learn more about it. Hope that worked. Yes.
I'm not sure what I have is a question or more of a comment, and then maybe some feedback from you. So I actually had my team build a digital twin back in 2016 at one of our factories. And after 2 years, we abandoned it. And the lesson learned was like comparing a Garmin to Google Maps. We ended up building a Garmin. It worked great for a while, and then it aged. And we reached the conclusion that to keep it refreshed was not a business proposition that made sense. And the watch out, I would say, and I really come back to what this gentleman is poking at, I guess, is lifecycle management of a digital twin needs to really be essentially automated. Just like Google Maps does the heavy lifting, and as a user, I do nothing. It's just giving me the latest all the time. Versus Garmin, or one of my previous cars had an inbuilt navigation system. I had to go to the dealership to update the maps every year or 2 years. And so that's the watch out. And I'm, again, curious, what guidance or advice do you have so that some of us don't fall into that pitfall again?
So I would tell you that I think there are two aspects, and by all means feel free, but I would tell you that I think there's two aspects of it. One is your platform has to support automation. It needs to support as many design systems as it can, automatically keeping that data up to date and keeping a record of the change, right? And two is, I think you need to figure out who you're going to partner with to make sure that your digital twins are staying up to date and they understand the systems you have and the data requirements you have, and they're able to support that. And they also adopt a platform that has that.
I would like to add something to that, but some of the reasons, I mean, like in the past, before I was marketing, I was a product manager as well, and I was very much into mapping, right? And I remember the conversation about, again, maintaining the map as a city, maintaining your base map. It was an extremely expensive proposition, especially in the 90s, 80s. It wouldn't be unheard of to spend $25 million to map a city like Medellin in Colombia. Impossible to justify, and very hard to maintain. You do it once, and then it's like you have to wait another 20 years to do another maintenance because it's very expensive. With that said, now we're used to this thing where there's this map of the world that is continuously updated, right? So, and Google Maps, I mean, Google is the largest mapping company in the world, if you guys didn't know, right? And they put a ton of technology into keeping that map up to date. And they figured out ways to do it, which were pretty innovative, right? If you think those cars driving around, they're partnering with companies that are collecting data from automatic mapping and GPS so that they keep the data up to date. So what I would posit is that there is this transition that we are going through in the industry where we're saying, well, yeah, we see the value, but how do we make it happen? And it's kind of expensive to get it done. But there's going to be a point in time when it's going to flip, where it's like we cannot afford not to have it, right? And the problem is where that's going to happen is when somebody figures out, oh, here's a simple way, right, to keep that map up to date, or again, keep this digital twin up to date. And again, to your point of the technical debt, right? Having an ecosystem of partners that focuses on building different aspects of that digital twin. Some pieces are going to be bringing data together and collecting and doing the ETLs and whatever so that they can bring data from sensors or whatnot to enrich the digital twin, or take the digital twin information and turn it into a crystal ball so if you're using the map analogy, how quickly do I need to go and take a rest in the restroom, because they know me, right? So that kind of thing is, I feel, where we are working towards, and I feel that is incumbent upon all of us. If we think that there's a better way to run these very large and complex industrial installations, to figure it out. So I would say that again, it's not if, it's when, and quite frankly, the how is all of us have to figure it out.
Yeah, I think if you look at some of the solutions that we've built on iTwin, and I will get to your question, you're starting to see glimmers of that. I'll give you, for instance, we have an iTwin solution for towers. It's admittedly a lot more simple than a platform or a process plant, but we're able to take the designs in, and then we're able to sort of augment them live, right? When we want to change transmitters on it, when we want to change things on it, we can actually do that on there. So kind of to Antonio's point, it's gonna get to that point where we're able to do those things. It's gonna take the right partners, and that's kind of what I'm getting at is we can build a lot of the technology, but we need to make sure that we're enabling the ecosystem so that the folks who are going to attempt to build those things, so that the guy who really is adamant about being able to build a solution for maintaining a digital twin after it's been built, has the platform to do that. And that's what we're sort of working towards.
Okay, this is a carry on with the previous is Dennis Brandel. I think the issue is you're looking at it from the design standpoint. From the operational standpoint, we've always had this problem of keeping our automation systems in sync with the actuals and to keep the HMIs in sync with the actuals. So when you say you got to have the right partners, the standards are out there. We have things like the asset administration shell that's coming out, which is talking about a device itself and has the information associated with it. We've got OPC UA that has device models behind it. We've got Sparkplug B on MQTT, all of which have these things, which we are already in the automation world using, because if our screens aren't up to date, we don't run the plant. Now, so when you're saying that you need to work, you need to look at the automation, the actual operation side of it, and pull that data back out and validate it and say, guess what? My digital twin's not working because the information I'm getting doesn't match anymore. Maybe I better go pull some screens, or maybe I better go do something like that. I think the solutions are there, but I think the design people need to work with the automation people.
Yeah, and I would tell you that we do tend to span beyond design, and I guess maybe we were a little design centric in our talk here today, but that's exactly why we're trying to build an open platform with REST APIs that partners can consume, right? So that you don't have to always come to Bentley or to get a solution done. And if the foundations and standards that you're talking about actually and those enterprise systems have APIs that can be leveraged, then they can actually interact quite easily with the platform as it is today, right? And then you can have partners who do the analysis between what you're seeing and what it looks like, and see if it's out of date.
Well, I hate to do this, but everybody's making me signs there that we're out.
We're out of time.
But this is great, because this is when the conversation was getting started. So we're going to be around. I have a couple drinks for whoever wants to talk about technical debt. Anybody that talks about technical debt, my friend. Anyway, so thank you so much for attending, and hope that this was useful and valuable for you guys.
Thank you.